Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Javad Nihami and these are the headlines. Prime Minister Imran Khan says Pakistan attaches great importance to its relations with Russia as a key foreign policy priority. Meeting Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Islamabad, Khan hailed Russia's efforts for Afghan peace and reiterated call for a negotiated settlement in Afghanistan. In his meeting with Army Chief General Javed Bajwa, Lavrov acknowledged Pakistan's efforts for peace in the region, particularly Afghanistan. The Army Chief said Pakistan has no hostile designs towards any country and will keep on working towards a regional framework based on mutual progress. The European Medicines Agency has found a possible link between the AstraZeneca vaccine and rare cases of blood clots in adults, but said benefits of the vaccine outweigh risks of the side effects as some EU countries restrict the use of the jab for those below 60 years of age. Globally, the virus has infected more than 132 million people, besides claiming over 2.8 million lives, including 15,026 in Pakistan. In Myanmar, troops have shot dead 13 more people after they opened fire on protesters rallying against the February 1st coup. Nearly 600 civilians have now been killed in the violence since then. A series of small blasts also hit the commercial capital Yangon as the crisis deepens. Iran has confirmed an attack on its cargo ship in the Red Sea, suspected to have been carried out by Israel. A spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry said the explosion occurred on Tuesday and caused minor damage with no casualties. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now the news in detail. Prime Minister Imran Khan says Pakistan attaches great importance to its relations with Russia as a key foreign policy priority. He was speaking to Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who called on him in Islamabad. It was the first time a Russian foreign minister visited Pakistan in 9 years and comes at a crucial time for Afghanistan, with the peace talks making little progress. More in this report.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived on a two-day official visit in Islamabad on Tuesday, where he was received by his Pakistani counterpart, Shah Mahmood Qureshi. In his meeting with Qureshi, Lavrov said Moscow and Islamabad would boost ties in the fight against terrorism, with Russia providing military equipment to Pakistan and the two holding joint exercises at sea and in the mountains. They also discussed economic relations, energy and counterterrorism cooperation, and progress on a major gas pipeline project. The visiting dignitary also called on Pakistan's Army Chief, General Javed Bajwa, at the general headquarters. According to the military's media wing, Lavrov acknowledged Pakistan's efforts for peace in the region, particularly in Afghanistan. It quoted the foreign minister as saying the ties between the two countries are on a positive trajectory and will continue to develop in multiple domains. In his remarks, the army chief said Pakistan has no hostile designs towards any country and will keep on working towards a regional framework based on mutual progress.
In Brazil, more than 4,000 people have died from COVID-19 overnight, registering yet another record number. India has reported 630 deaths and over 115,000 infections in a single day, the highest this year. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.8 million lives and infected over 132 million others. More in this report. The coronavirus crisis, lingering on for about 15 months now, is aggravating socio-economic difficulties across the world. Canada's Prime Minister says the country is facing a very serious third wave as its most populous province struggles to respond to rising cases. In the US, White House spokesperson said Washington will not back a system that requires Americans to carry vaccine credentials. This comes as President Joe Biden moved up the vaccine eligibility target for all adults to April 19th, 2 weeks earlier than May 1st. In South America, medical students came to the streets against the lack of vaccines in Venezuela, while Peruvian doctors protested over work conditions. As Brazil's death toll approaches 337,000, experts term the country's crisis as biological Fukushima.
Brazil is the epicenter of COVID-19 pandemic globally, and the World Health Organization recognizes this. Forecasts by some epidemiological institutes show that probably before July 1st, Brazil will surpass the 500,000 mark of COVID-19 deaths, rapidly approaching the total number of deaths of the United States, the country that had the highest absolute number of deaths.
The European Medicines Agency has found a possible link between the AstraZeneca vaccine and rare cases of blood clots in adults, but said benefits of the vaccine outweigh risks of the side effects as some EU countries restrict the use of the jab for those below 60 years of age. Germany's drug maker CureVac says global supply chains for making COVID-19 vaccines have been disrupted by US restrictions. Meanwhile, World Health Organization has again condemned the unavailability of vaccines to a number of countries.
Scaling up production and equitable distribution remains the major barrier to ending the acute stage of this pandemic. It is a travesty that in some countries health workers and those at risk groups remain completely unvaccinated.
Australia says it will ask the EU to release more than 3 million AstraZeneca doses, testing Brussels' claim it is not blocking shipments. G20 financial leaders have agreed to boost resources for the International Monetary Fund by $650 billion. The raise has been given to deal with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. In a draft, the financial chiefs said they will step up support to vulnerable countries to address the pandemic challenges. They also agreed to extend a freeze of debt servicing on developing countries to help them deal with the pandemic. The death toll from COVID-19 in Pakistan has exceeded 15,000 as it reported over 100 daily deaths again. The Health Ministry recorded 102 fatalities and more than 4,000 new infections overnight. The caseload has surpassed 700,000, out of which more than 620,000 people have recovered. The ministry said the country's positivity ratio stands at 9.6%. At present, there are over 64,000 active cases in the country. More than 3,800 are critical. In Myanmar, security forces have shot dead 13 more people after they opened fire on protesters rallying against the February 1st coup. More than 20 others were wounded. A series of small blasts also hit the commercial capital Yangon as the crisis deepens. In a statement, the country's military ruler said the civil disobedience movement is destroying the country. A military official has earlier indicated that the emergency rule can be extended for 2 years. Nearly 600 civilians have been killed in the violence following the coup. Iran has confirmed an attack on its cargo ship in the Red Sea suspected to have been carried out by Israel. A spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry said the explosion occurred on Tuesday and caused minor damage with no casualties. In a statement, spokesperson Saeed Khatibzadeh said the civilian ship was stationed there to secure the region against pirates. According to a report by the New York Times, the attack was carried out by Israel, keeping U.S. interests in mind. Meanwhile, Pentagon spokesperson Commander Jessica McNulty said no U.S. forces were involved in the incident. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. A Pakistan Navy warship has arrived at Iran's Bandar Abbas port. The Navy's media wing says the visit aims to enhance regional peace and security. It said the PNS Azmat was received by Iranian naval officers and Pakistan's diplomatic officials. The warship also took part in a passage exercise with the Iranian Navy. The mission commander of the Pakistan Navy met Iranian civil and military officials. He conveyed the good wishes of the naval chief, Admiral Mohammad Amjad Khan Niazi, to the people of Iran. World powers and Iran have agreed to form working groups to discuss Washington sanctions in a bid to revive a 2015 nuclear deal. At a news briefing, U.S. State Department spokesperson called the meeting with the deal signatories in Vienna as constructive.
Ned Price said it is a potentially useful step as the U.S. seeks to determine what Iranians are prepared to do to return to compliance. U.S. delegation head Rob Malley said indirect talks would be about identifying the steps that Washington and Tehran are going to have to take. In response, Iran's chief negotiator Abbas Araghchi says Washington must lift all sanctions. He said Tehran will resume its nuclear compliance only after verifying this. Araghchi added he doubts the U.S. has the same seriousness as Iran regarding the matter. Meanwhile, China called on the U.S. to lift all sanctions and Iran to comply with the deal. The Russian envoy to Vienna said the two working groups, one on Iran and one on the U.S., have already begun their efforts. The next meeting will be held on Friday.
Taliban say they have killed a number of Afghan soldiers in a missile attack on the Kandahar air base. In a tweet, a Taliban spokesperson said the attack also caused heavy material losses. Earlier, 2 civilians were killed during an IED explosion in Nangarhar's capital of Jalalabad. Local officials said 18 others were wounded in the blast, including 3 policemen. Violence in Afghanistan has risen despite international peace efforts. In Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, police have banned media from covering the inhumane cordon and search operations. The Indian occupation forces use these operations to commit extrajudicial killings of innocent Kashmiris. In a statement, the police chief asked media not to interfere in the duty of armed forces at the operation site. Meanwhile, Indian troops have launched so-called search operations in Srinagar, Shopian, and other areas of the territory. The occupying forces are conducting house-to-house searches. The operation was still going on till the last reports came in. In Pakistan, Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee General Nadeem Razak has witnessed a firing of air defense weapon systems and surface-to-air missiles to mark the culmination of exercise Al-Baizad 2. Visiting Army air defense ranges near Karachi, General Razak lauded the high standards of training by the troops. He emphasized the importance of air defense in modern warfare. Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmad Babar Sidhu and China's ambassador to Pakistan, Nong Rong, also witnessed the exercise. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says the world has entered the 4th industrial age. He was addressing the 10th virtual D8 summit hosted by Bangladesh. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Pakistan is committed to vision and objectives of the D8. Prime Minister Imran Khan will lead Pakistan's delegation on the 8th of April. The D8 was established in 1997 to promote economic and development cooperation among 8 member states. This year's summit will adopt a roadmap for the next 10 years. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will hand over the forum's chair to Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says his main concern is poverty alleviation in the country. Khan held a meeting in Islamabad with the members of the United Nations Development Programme. Speaking at the launch of UNDP's Pakistan Human Development Report, Khan said Islamabad will be approaching the International Monetary Fund for assistance given the challenges posed by COVID-19. He said despite Pakistan's economy moving in the right direction, authorities see disruptions ahead. The Prime Minister said the services sectors has been badly affected and will require incentives. Khan said the UNDP report will help Islamabad directly provide subsidy to the population which is in need of financial assistance. Malaysia's former Prime Minister has been served with a bankruptcy notice for failing to pay more than $400 million in unpaid taxes. In a Facebook post, former Premier Najib Razak said the authorities issued the notice on Monday, shortly after his appeal hearing. He described the move as an attempt to destroy his political career, as he will lose his seat in the parliament if declared bankrupt. He said the timing of the notice was linked to last month's decision by his political party to stop cooperating with the ruling party in upcoming elections. Najib is facing dozens of corruption and money laundering charges of the suspected theft of billions of dollars from 1MDB. But he has denied wrongdoing and filed a court appeal to set aside his conviction. Russia says it will keep forces near its border with Ukraine until the situation in the Donbas region is normalized. In a statement, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the military movements are defensive and pose no threat to anyone. Western nations have called for restraint after Ukraine raised alarm over Russia's military deployment near its border. Earlier, Russia warned that Ukraine's admission into NATO will only aggravate the crisis. Russian-backed separatists have fought against Ukrainian forces in the Donbas region since 2014, a conflict that Kiev says has killed 14,000 people. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Amnesty International says Russia's Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny is imprisoned in conditions that may slowly kill him. Amnesty Secretary General Agnes Callamard said Russian authorities are violating Navalny's rights. Callamard said Moscow may be seeking to hide what is being done to Navalny. In an interview, she said authorities are imposing prison conditions that amount to torture. Navalny announced a hunger strike last week to protest the inadequate medical care in the prison. He was handed a jail term in February after a court ruled that he had violated parole for a fraud conviction. Ethiopia has accused Egypt and Sudan of having stalled the latest round of talks on the Nile Dam convened in Kinshasa. Ethiopia has been facing opposition from Egypt since it launched the $5 billion dam in 2011. The latest talks ended with a positive response from Ethiopia, but were met with rejections from Egypt and Sudan. Both Egypt and Sudan fear water shortages, while Ethiopia said it has every right to use Nile waters long exploited by Cairo. And other business updates, the Wall Street stocks have opened higher as investors await details of the Federal Reserve's policy meeting. Shares of airlines and cruise lines led the gains as Royal Caribbean, Norwegian Cruise Line and United Airlines gained over 2%. All the major bourses traded fractionally higher. Meanwhile, the U.S. trade deficit has surged to a record high in February after a robust economic activity. Moreover, oil prices have dropped despite prospects for stronger global economic growth. Moving on, in the National Basketball Association, the Golden State Warriors rallied in the second half to narrowly edge the Milwaukee Bucks 122-121 in San Francisco. Stephen Curry scored 41 points to help the Warriors snap a three-game losing streak. Kelly Oubre Jr. recorded 19 points for the Warriors, while Kent Bazemore added 18. The Bucks missed their leading scorer and rebounder Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was out due to injury. Meanwhile, Atlanta Hawks beat New Orleans Pelicans 123-107 to bag their fourth straight win. Atlanta's Trae Young recorded 30 points and added 12 assists. In other fixtures, Los Angeles Lakers defeated Toronto Raptors 110-101. China says attempts to politicize sporting events are against the spirit of the Olympic Charter. China's foreign ministry spokesperson said it also undermines the interests of the athletes and the international Olympic cause. In a news briefing, Zhao Lijian said China is ready to work with all the parties to make Beijing 2022 Olympic a remarkable event. The remarks come after the U.S. State Department denied considering a joint boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics. In a clarification statement, the department said U.S. position on the Beijing Olympics has not changed. It added Washington has not discussed and is not discussing any boycott with allies and partners. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now of the latest updates. You can follow us on social media at Indus.News.